Today's gospel is from the Gospel of John, the 12th chapter. 6 days before Passover, Jesus went to Bethany, the village of Lazarus, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. There they gave a banquet in Jesus' honor, at which Martha served. Lazarus was one of those at the table. Mary brought a pound of costly ointment, pure nard, and anointed the feet of Jesus, wiping them with her hair. The house was full of the scent of ointment. Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples, the one who would betray Jesus, protested. Why wasn't this ointment sold? It could have brought nearly a year's wages and the money given to the poor people. Judas didn't say this because he was concerned for the people, but he was a thief. He was in charge of the common fund and would help himself to it. So Jesus replied, "Leave her alone. She did this in preparation for my burial. You have poor people with you always, but you won't always have me." Meanwhile, a large crowd heard that Jesus was there and came to see not only Jesus, but also Lazarus, whom he raised from the dead. So the chief priest planned to kill Lazarus as well, since it was because of him that many of the people were leaving them and believing in Jesus. The Gospel of the Lord.
Beloved community, grace, mercy, and peace to you from the God of all grace and love and mercy, who was, who is, and who is to come. Amen. The grace-infused aroma of our gospel text today is, beloved community, of course, my whole sermon just completely kicked me out. And that would just be the way the day is going. So right now, and I'm going to be talking about the aroma of Christ, but right now I would love for you in the chat or on Facebook to type in, what is your most favorite smell? Here we go. Oh, and I see all of yours: campfire, jasmine, gardenias. Favorite smell is vanilla, lavender, rain, chocolate chip cookies, the smell of earth and worms and candle and smoke. Oh my goodness, you have so many great things that you have lifted up as phenomenal smells. The candle smoke, cupcakes, cinnamon. Oh, there are so many that you have lifted up. Vanilla. Oh, already? Can you start to smell some of these things? I love the smell of tiramisu. I love the smell of rain, or like bark chips. I don't know why, but I like fresh bark chips. Yes, and the evergreens that, as Bobby mentioned as well. And oh, we've got honey and fresh cut fir and peppermint. So hopefully your senses are now awakened, because we're going to talk about all of the smells that are in this gospel text today. Mary and Martha are throwing a dinner party for Jesus to celebrate that he has raised their brother Lazarus from the dead. Now, what do you serve someone who brings your loved one back to life? I imagine their house is filled with so many great smells, maybe like some of the ones that you just typed in the chat. Fresh bread, roasted goat with olive oil and herbs, fried fish, glasses brimming with full-bodied red wine, candied figs, dried dates. There was probably a familiar smell of beeswax candles that almost tasted like amber and soft glow. Like if you could saute love and joy, I think it would smell like this thank you party. I mean, imagine it. You can even close your eyes if you need to get into this scene. But Jesus is reclining at the table with his friends. They didn't have tables and chairs. No, they had low tables where they would recline and sit on the ground. Jesus is present, like relaxed for this moment, probably telling Lazarus a story that has them both smiling as they reach for more food. As I peer into this scene, this story, I wonder how many times Mary and Martha just stopped and they stared at their brother Lazarus, because they had seen him die and they had tended to his lifeless body. They had tasted their own salty tears and they had smelled the stench of his body after had laid in the tomb for 4 days. But here he is, miraculously, thanks to Jesus, very much alive, reclining at the table, eating. Like, his tongue is working, his esophagus is working, his nose is working, his kidneys and capillaries, his gut bacteria and his intestines, they're all working together. I mean, Lazarus did not smell of death, but of new life and saffron and garlic and cumin. Like, the fragrance wafting from this house was mouth-watering good. And for a moment, I'm sure everything, like, it felt right with the world in this little house, this thank you party. However, there is another smell in the room, and it's death. You see, once Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, the Pharisees and the religious elites began plotting to kill Jesus. Jesus instilled too much hope. Jesus healed too many people. And many people were deserting their regular religious practices and following Jesus. And Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead, well, that was the final straw. So the authorities not only wanted to dispose of Jesus, but they issued a death warrant for Lazarus. They wanted to kill him again. The smell of death is real. I mean, just as the smell of my great-grandpa Bill's snickerdoodles are real. But even if something's real, that doesn't mean we want to reach out and participate in it or smell it. And the smell of death is something that we try to avoid, something that brings us alarm, and we try to keep at an arm's length. Yesterday, NPR reported that there were 3 highly trained dogs that were deployed to rapidly screen 1,000 NASCAR pit crew and staff for COVID-19. Since dogs can smell 100,000 times better than humans, and small studies are actually showing that they have a 98 to 99% success rate on smelling the coronavirus. Well, that they used these dogs to help kind of clear the way for them to have their huge event for NASCAR. Dogs are like a mobile biodetection sensory tool that can smell the threat of death. And after sniffing the palm of a person for 5 or 10 seconds, the dogs actually are cued to just sit at the person's feet, and then they administer a rapid COVID-19 test. Now, Mary, she did not awkwardly smell Jesus's palm to detect his death. And she doesn't have superhuman sense of smell. But instead, I think Mary was paying attention to the rumors and sensing the mounting hostility that was right outside their door. Like, Mary was the disciple that sat at Jesus's feet when women were never to take the position of a disciple. She was attentive to his words and intuitively understood what they meant, because Jesus was clear. He predicted his death in casual conversations. He did not have to explicitly say the cross to communicate that his liberating acts of love would eventually lead him to innocent death. And so this scene of this dinner party, it shifts yet again, because out of love and gratitude and immense faithfulness, Mary takes a very, very expensive jar of nard and she anoints Jesus's feet, and then she wipes them with her hair. Again, the house is overcome with fragrance that smells of life and death. Nard, also known as spikenard, was used to prepare bodies for burial in ancient times, but it was also used as a perfume or even medicine. Spikenard is an herbal medicine that's naturally used for insomnia and stress and digestive problems and weak immune systems and depression, anxiety, and infections. Today, there's hospice nurses who are studying how nard might be able to help people in the dying process. Nard helps bring calm and relief for those who are experiencing stress of the unknown. So maybe Mary's act of intimate and extravagant generosity was not only a thank you for bringing Lazarus back to life, but it was also a gentle, hospice-like care for her rabbi, who the next day would ride into Jerusalem on a donkey, stoking the flames of hate in a nonviolent palm procession that served as a humble protest in the shadow of the empire. Maybe Mary could smell the cross on Jesus before he ever stood before a rigged trial and Pontius Pilate. Beloved community, Palm Sunday. It marks the beginning of Holy Week and our journey with Jesus to the cross. And simultaneously, we smell death and life because they are all around us. Life, I just smelled it the other day. I was downtown and a couple of restaurants have just opened up that have been closed down, but now that restrictions are lifting, they started to have this beautiful smells of curry coming out of the restaurant. And I thought, oh, there is new life. There's hope all around us as there are more families that are planning reunions and getting together and baking cookies together and getting a chance to share meals together. There is life that all of us can smell. But we're also waking up way too many mornings with yet another tragic story of violence and death. And maybe we don't smell it, but metaphorically, we can smell that which stinks of violence. I mean, just in the last 2 weeks, there have been horrific shootings in Atlanta and Chicago, which never gets any press, and Boulder and Virginia. Violence that doesn't make any sense, and violence that feels too commonplace. We can see it, we can smell it, we want to avoid it. Everyday people just going to work or grocery store or just playing tourists for the day, that they are targeted for no reason. That's why we need Holy Week. Beloved community, we need Holy Week. We need a story that tells us the truth about our twisted world and our fickle hearts. We need a journey through the depth of betrayal and denial and mob mentality and power and abandonment and the insanity of violence, holding our breath, waiting on God to do what we cannot. From the cross, as Jesus labored to breathe, he looked at his enemies, he looked them in the eyes, and he said, the most self-giving, potent prayer, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Holy Week, it lets us hear this again, that in the face of violence and sin, Jesus says enough. In the face of hatred and revenge and the abuse of power, Jesus says enough. In the face of death and the loss of innocent life, Jesus says enough. In the face of what seems to be like a dead-end tomb, the Spirit says enough with death. I'm going to make a way for new life to come. You see, the very heart of the Christian faith is the Holy Week journey, the movement from death to life. And we're living in this tension. We're smelling it, the life and the death. And here is the aroma of Christ. Out of love and abundant grace, Jesus suffers with us, holds our pain, our dysfunction, the chaos of our unjust systems. He bleeds, and he surrenders and he reeks of death. And we don't need to be a Labrador retriever to sense that this death is unjust. And yet the perfume of the resurrection is stronger than death. And the smells that we will smell on Easter will be those flowers of lilies and gardenias and tulips, the life that emerges. But we need Holy Week to walk this journey, to ignite all of our senses, to smell the life, to smell the death, to smell life again. This week on Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, Easter Vigil, and Easter Sunday, we are intentionally engaging all of our senses. And so I hope that you are, wherever you find yourself, whether you're traveling or you are in town, that you can engage. On Monday, Thursday at 6 o'clock, we're going to have a dinner church. You're invited to, on Zoom or Facebook, eat dinner with us as a community as we engage all of our senses, as we are at the table with Jesus for his final meal, for the hand washing and the feet washing, and to hear of his betrayal. On Good Friday, we will meet virtually again as we hear the last words of Jesus as we journey with him to the cross. It will be stark and the lights will slowly dim, but it will be a moment of truth telling. And then on Easter Saturday, the children and families of our community at 6 o'clock will be inviting us to the parking lot where we will have an Easter vigil and we will tell the stories, the ancient stories of salvation. We will hear the Easter story and say the first alleluias of our community. And then we will have an in-person Easter morning service out in the courtyard, as we have done for years and years. You are welcome to come and to celebrate. And then we've got drive-through donuts and coffee and the celebration of joy where we can taste and see communion in a different way, as well as we'll have a 10 a.m. Zoom Easter service. So you can see there are many different ways to walk this journey. But my prayer is that you find this journey to be one that Jesus is calling you into, that you might taste and smell and see the goodness and grace of God. Amen.